Hey Simonics, what's up? Welcome to a new Ionic tutorial. Today we're going to talk about a lot of interesting things. First of all, we're going to build a progressive web application with Ionic. We're gonna add caching for API routes. So we will retrieve data and we will store it directly with our service worker. And we will also upload our Ionic progressive web app to Netlify this time. So I picked a different service because it needs to be interesting, right? Let's do this. I already created a blank new Ionic application, and actually the only thing you really need to run is creating a blank new app, diving into it, and then using the Angular schematic to make it progressive web app ready. Once you do this, a lot of files will be generated. We don't need to save this. I actually moved my editor view to the side, which is really not great for this example and showing you the structure here. But in general, I hope this helps you to focus more on the code, because now the code isn't jumping all the time. A little something I saw online. So after adding the progressive web app snippet, we can see the schematic. We can see that within the app module, we got a block which registers our service worker if we're running in a production environment. So during testing, we won't really see anything of this. And we also got our not safe for work config somewhere. Where's the file? There we go. Inside that file, we will later add a bit of caching. It already comes with caching for files that are within the bundle of our application, but we also want to cache API routes, so we can basically use our application offline after the first usage. So those are the most interesting files we need today. I also created a little bit inside. I really need to feel this a bit more. I already started within the app module. So we inject the HTTP client module, of course, to make API requests. So go ahead, HTTP client module goes into the imports, and that's basically all we need to change in here. Then we can move on to our home page. Within here, once again, of course, we need the HTTP client. And we will do two different API calls, so we can distinguish them a bit better later in our application, since there are different strategies for caching your data within a progressive web app. But first of all, let's also check if we're currently online or offline. This will really help us to see if our application is currently online and retrieving data or offline. And I knew in the past it was kind of complicated figuring out whether you're online or offline. Sometimes there's actually another step, because you can be online, but you can be like in an environment that doesn't allow to make HTTP requests to somewhere on the web. That means if you really want a secure check, if you can access your API, you really need a service that makes just a little call to your API in the beginning to see if you're really in an environment that supports your API call. This is really just standard networking stuff. So you really need to figure out which part your application needs, especially if it is a business application. Now, first of all, let's grab the current status of our connection by using the network plugin from Capacitor. It actually only has two functions, so we can get the status, and we can simply set our app is online to status.hello. There's connected. So that's a Boolean, true or false. We're either connected or not. But we will also add a little listener to the network plugin, and we're gonna use network status change in here. Thanks for the code completion, actually. Seems to be a good day for a tutorial today. So once the status changes, we will once again set our app is online to status.connected. You could also log this out to see the change. Actually, I will do this because we're gonna want to see a bit in this video. And that's it, first of all. I think by now this could actually already work. So let's give it a try. We're not displaying anything great, but we can change here to offline. And then we see connected false, connection type none. If I go back and set it back to online, we should see another one, connection type interesting. I think I got Wi-Fi, but you never know. So that was the first part, not really the most important part. Now we're gonna make 2 API calls, nothing really special. We wanna make one call to the random user API and fetch just 5 random results. Let's open this. So you might have used this in the past. I really like this API. Gives you a lot of information for dummy testing. And I also used the Chuck Norris API to get a random joke. Not sure why, but it was the first thing I found that supported chorus and was working great. So for those 2 API routes, we're gonna implement different caching strategies later. For the second, for now, we just quickly need to implement our view. I already added 2 buttons to the view. Additionally, we now want to add the information about our joke so we can display the current joke that we retrieved. And of course, a simple list for the dummy user API. You can grab, as usual, all the code right below the video, click to the Devdactic block, and you will find it. But we will really just go through the users. We're gonna add a thumbnail, and we're gonna add a label with some information. Now, we also want to show a little indicator about our current online status. So we can add a footer. Either if our app is online, we're printing out you're online, and if we're not online, we're printing out you are offline. So that was give us a nice information. Let's try if I can actually also do it from here. Yeah, that works great as well. So I can switch between online and offline. I can now get data, I can get new data, I can get a Chuck Norris joke, and I can get a lot of other jokes. Now, if the app is offline, of course, our requests will completely fail because we got no network connection. So this is the time where our progressive web app will really shine. We can actually close the homepage and move to our not safe for work config. In here, we can now add another entry called data groups. So the asset groups will define how our application files are cached, how the styling files are cached, how our resources within our application are cached. But within the data groups, we can actually specify different groups. So the name is just a key for that group. I will just call this, let's say, joke API. Then we're gonna say a version, because APIs might change in the future and you don't want to have something cached from an old version, so you can update this in the future. Then you gotta specify the URLs. I will bring in the one we used. So API Chuck Norris IO. That's the same one right here. Actually, I'm not using jokes random. I will just use the wildcard ** to match everything. You could even match just specific routes of your own API. If you have something that really won't change, like fetching categories or something like this, that can be also helpful in this case. Additionally, now the important part begins, which is the cache config. Now, the first part is the strategy. This is either freshness or performance. Now, you can already imagine what this means. Freshness means your app always wants to have the most up-to-date information, basically. Performance, on the other hand, means your application should be as fast as possible, and being up to date with the information isn't too important. So those are really the 2 things you can use from here. Let's say for Chuck Norris, we want to use freshness. You also then need to specify the max size, also how many items will be cached, let's say just 5. Then you can define the maximum age for your cache. So even if we cached something now after 5 hours, it wouldn't be used anymore. And then we can also specify the timeout, which means after how long when connecting to the API and not getting a result, the cached version of your data will be used. So for example, I'm not sure about the, there was a special case from the Angular strategy. So you can emulate a third strategy to use the set freshness and timeout. So use strategy freshness and timeout to 0 seconds, which means it will try to fetch a network list. Because the request doesn't complete in 0 milliseconds, it will immediately use the version from cache. But in the background, the request will also finish. So your data will basically load in the background, and next time you make the call, you get back that information. So I'm not sure in which cases this might be relevant. I just wanted to add it because I found it kind of interesting as well. So now we got a data group defined for Chuck Norris, but we also need a second one for the random user API. The URL for the random user could be the same like this with a wildcard, or you can use really just the specific one. But in that case, make sure you're really using the exact URL. Yes, we do. I forgot to use the slash in here and then nothing got cached, and it took me like half an hour to figure it out. So this time we're gonna use performance. That means if our application is running as a progressive web app, the call to the random user API will actually try to first of all use the cached version of the data. I will just set now the maximum age to, let's say, 10 seconds, maybe 20. No, let's use 10. Because then we can see during those 10 seconds while the data is cached, we would always get back that information. After that 10 seconds, we can't use the cached version anymore. So this is really something you need to figure out. Set the maximum size to whatever you want and timeout as well. Doesn't really matter too much. Now we can build this, but to completely finish our coding, let's put one more item into our package.json. This will become relevant in a few minutes. So a little hint here. We're gonna add an npm script to run a production build, so ng build -- prod. This will be important for our hosting. But first of all, testing your progressive web app won't work with Ionic Serve since you're running in a development mode. What you need to do instead is run Ionic build -- prod. Once you do this, this is like the first video where I got the bar on the right side and I already regret my decision because somewhere here's my head and I need to figure this out. Anyway, the production build will now create a www folder that we can easily host with a tool like the simple HTTP server. If you don't have this, I really recommend you install it. npm install -g HTTP server, or with brew if you're fancy. And then you can just run HTTP server www and it will serve your progressive web app. I usually run into trouble when my app is served as a progressive web app because it always messes everything up with caching, but that's the easiest way to test your application, since building the progressive web app and uploading it and testing it then is really not a great way. So running a production build will now inject our service worker so we can give it a try with our HTTP local server. All right, here we go. App seems to be ready. So let's run HTTP server and let's see. Immediately the server comes up. So here's our application. I'm pretty sure this is like a cached version. It's like never really working great for me, but I really hope it will work this time. So within application, we can check out our cache storage. Let's see if there's already something cached. Yeah, there is something cached. So let's clear the site data. And yeah, this is where the magic begins. Let's hope, no, we got nothing in the cache, or at least nothing from the APIs. Yeah, that's great. So here we go. Our application is ready. Let's make a simple call to get data and to get online data. Nothing fancy so far. We can check it out. We can see the HTTP calls somewhere. So maybe I can filter by API. This one is the call to the random user API, and this one is the call to Chuck Norris. Perfect. They are already handled by the service worker. I don't think so, or perhaps the service worker did fetch the data, but the important part is let's check out the application, and you need to dive into this a bit. So let's close this, nobody needs it. Random user API. There we see the age, and somewhere we should also see our result. So here inside the cache storage, we can really find what the service worker did cache. The whole result, you can see Monsieur Mustafa Lopez and then all the other ones. It's exactly the data we see here. And if you look up for the Chuck Norris API, you will also see the same. We got one for the lifetime of our cache, and somewhere we also find the real data. So Chuck Norris always cut his birthday cake with a chainsaw. Not too funny actually, but maybe true. Okay, that's the API, the Progressive Web App in action, first of all, right here. Now we need to dive in and see if this application can work offline. So therefore, I'm gonna make a request first of all and get some data, and then I'm going offline. So what happens if I now try to get data again? It will come directly from the service worker, and the same for our get online data. It will fail and come only from the service worker. And we actually see that we really get data. We get a joke result, and this was intended because our cache duration is just 10 seconds. So during those 10 seconds, we were able to get the data from cache, and the app really thought, oh, everything's fine, we get the data, everything's cool. But now, since the data is not valid anymore, we will get an error for the call to update our list. For the other one, the cache duration is pretty long, and we still get the same joke result from our storage. Once we now go back online, and let's go back, we should be able to, first of all, get data once again, and of course also get new Chuck Norris jokes. What we also see right now is we don't get any new data because we got the caching strategy for our random user API called performance. That means during the 10 seconds while our information is valid, this call will actually not retrieve any new data. So during those 10 seconds, I can click this all the time, and the information will always be taken from our service worker, since we want to optimize for performance. I hope this really shows the difference between performance and freshness, and you can decide which is more important for which calls inside your application. Now, that was the caching part of our tutorial. Now to the hosting part. We have already built the application, cool, not really needed. So what we're gonna do now is upload it. In fact, I already did so, but I will show you how you can do it as well. First of all, I recommend you generate a new repository within GitHub. Give it a name, whatever you want, and then you will get a few commands to add this to your local project, because Ionic projects are already Git projects, so it's not necessary to create a complete project with these files. I actually already prepared what you need to do. So after you've added all your changes locally, you run git add dot. This will add all the files that were added, like the service worker, the configuration, or any new files. Then you commit your changes. So let's call this initial commit perhaps. And once you're done with this, you can push your code to the new repository. Since you don't have a repository, maybe you already got one, you should add a new remote. This will be shown once you create your GitHub repository, and of course it won't be this URL, but your username and the name for your project. And once you've done this, you can push it. I called this still master. Next time I will call it main. I really forgot about this and need to figure out if there's another difference between master and main, but I will definitely try to use main in the future as well and recommend it for you as well. Now, once you get your code in GitHub, like I have here inside my repository, you can create a new account at Netlify, not Netflix. Well, it's like Netflix for your career. No, that was a different service. Netlify helps you to host static pages. And you can actually connect it to your repositories. You simply click New Site from Git. You select GitHub, or perhaps if you have it in Bitbucket, then use Bitbucket. You select GitHub, you authorize, I already did this. You check out your repository, and then The most important part is actually the build command. And for the build command, you now want to insert npm run build prod. So if you are carefully watching this video, you now understand why we added this block to our package JSON. It's simply that Netlify can easily run this script npm build prod and then triggers the production build of our application. Because if we just run npm build -- prod wasn't working, perhaps something like this might work. I haven't tried this out, but this one will definitely work. And it's important that Netlify builds the production build, since with a development build, your service worker won't be included. Once you got this publish directory, we've seen this www, and then you can deploy your site. Since I already did this, I got this great application name. My application is here, and I will also open this directly with screen mirroring on my Mac so we can see it in action as well. This is just, once again, the same like before, so not that super interesting. So here's the application on my device. We haven't added any more information like cool icons, name, status bar, colors, but that's not a problem. I know what's happening now. I will go into flight mode and the app will disconnect, right? I think so. But let's see. Still the same stuff works like before. I can get the data, I can get the online data. And if I now go into the flight mode, I will be immediately disconnected. Yeah. So my app is offline and you're not seeing it anymore. Perfect. That was exactly what I wanted to show you. Well, turns out I have thought a lot about the code and the different stuff for this tutorial, but not how to record my screen while going into airplane mode. So the only thing I can show you right now is getting data, and once I go offline, the connection is also lost. So I really recommend you give a try to my super application. I will post a link as well below this video. You can add it as a progressive web app. On iOS, you need to use Safari, and you can add it to home screen. On Android, you can use the standard Chrome browser. And then the cool thing is really that we can see this caching in action, of course, like we did in the browser, but you can now also close this application, go into airplane mode, and open the application up, and clicking on get data will actually give you back the data that the service worker has cached. Keep in mind that we have added only a maximum age of 10 seconds right now for the random user API, so you might want to increase this as well. You can test this out with different settings in your own Netlify application. We really went through this quite quickly. So after you push new code to GitHub, a new build will be triggered, and everything is basically already configured. Since you can go to deploy settings, and you will see your build command npm run build prod and the publish directory. That is really the only thing you need to take care of, and then all new builds will be handled by Netlify, and you will see the build log, publish version, and so on. So I really hope you enjoyed this video about progressive web apps with Ionic with caching your API. Think about, again, the freshness and the performance strategy. Those are very different in itself. So you really need to think about if you want to be like performance first or offline mode first. That is really up to you and what you want to cache inside of your application. But besides that, it's super easy these days to host your application. Now with Netlify connected to your repository on GitHub or Bitbucket, you just need to push your code and a new progressive web app version is ready. I really love this, and if you want to see more about progressive web apps, any specific topics or anything else in general, please let me know, because I really like progressive web apps as well. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and stay subscribed so you get notified about all the new tutorials, quick wins, and other app development and web development videos on this channel. If you want to learn more about Ionic with in-depth courses, a community of like-minded developers so you can learn and build your apps faster, you should definitely check out the Ionic Academy, which is my code school to help you with everything Ionic, with a huge library of courses, material, and a supportive Slack channel so we can get your app out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you inside the next video. Have a great day and happy coding. Simon.